What's happening, YouTube? What's up? So this one's gonna be about George Clinton's influences musically. You know, when you think about one of the most important producers and band leaders ever, and one of the most important bands ever in Parliament Funkadelic, and his handprints on so much, you gotta kind of wonder who inspired him. Stop, pump, hold the brakes, and look back in the rear view, because this guy uh, has had such an imprint on so much of modern dance and groove based music and just and other styles too, because it wasn't just limited. But you think of the funk, you think of George Clinton. But this gonna be very interesting when you make the discoveries of certain things. Won't be surprising at all if you listen to early funkadelic records, if you understand Eddie Hazel or Michael Hampton, and if you listen to certain tones of Bootsy Collins, etc. It's gonna be very interesting. For some, it's gonna be pretty predictable. But I'm gonna give you some of the influences. He mentioned Frank Zappa. That was an interesting one because Zappa's styling was kind of over the place. It was interesting hybrid of musical styles. George Duke played there. It's way before George Duke was doing strictly basically funk and R&B records. It was a different styling as an artistry with Frank Zappa, a different musical hybrid and artistry. But um, you could see you definitely certain things that the Parliament did. Certain things you could see. He mentioned Cream, the sonic boom on the guitars and the volume and the vibe. You could see that. He mentioned the Beatles. There was his songwriting on Motown. I would say, like, I want to testify. Like, if you go his early songwriting, which was pretty more straightforward, people forget that man was a really good songwriter. I mean, you know, it became more than just sing along anthems because actually there was a sing along and a vibe with him, but that was really something. So you could see that. Now let's get to the obvious ones. Jimi Hendrix, because that fusion of blues and R&B and pop, and then this organic, bombastic guitar and the screams and the vocals that would echo that and the stylings, you could definitely see a strong Jimi Hendrix experience and that whole totality, that richness, that engagedness, that rawness, that boldness. You could definitely understand why he was alluding to that. Definitely a strong influence. And Jimi Hendrix is felt on so many artists 60 plus years later that, you know, he did the thing. Then the Irish one next to Sly Stone. Well, that's another one that's just like that with Jimi Hendrix, because you can't really talk about modern R&B music. And of course, with the documentary that came out some months ago, you got to acknowledge Sly Stone. And they did music together and collaborations together. And George Clinton held Sly to high regard. Those songs were so catchy, so sing along, but yet they resonated and they were an inspiration to Drive to Thrive. They made P Funk go to another level. That's what greatness does, and that was the foundation. Now you gotta remember, George Clinton worked at Motown Records. He was a peer of James Brown, so he saw all that. Got Bootsy, Maceo Parker, um, uh, um, Fred Wesley, and all of them. Got them cats come from JB, so that might be not someone that he's gonna necessarily acknowledge, but he would in his own way. But he was aware of all that. George Clinton's in front and center of a lot of things that he see musical. And there's other artists that he's held in high regard. But when you talk about influences and those people, that's what comes to mind when he said that. Lord knows with hip hop and sampling and stuff, P Funk should be like the equivalent of Apple Computer. Because if we took everybody the way they were sampled, oh man, they were sampled. But anyway, let me know what you think about his influences and the artists that he liked. And do you think it reflects in the music that came out of the P Funk mob? Please like, subscribe, welcome thoughts, comments, and I do respond. Thank you. Wash your hands. Keep your mind clear. Watch out for another. Share if you like and hit that membership because when you do, requests like this come true. Stay safe, stay blessed, stay woke, stay free. I'm out. Peace.